The Zorix Empire believed they were too strong to be challenged. They ruled many planets and systems with fear. When they found 10 human scientists working quietly on a small, frozen moon, they didn't ask questions. They didn't send a warning. They simply acted. These humans had discovered something, a strange signal deep in space, something ancient, something powerful. The Zorix didn't want that knowledge to spread, so they made a cruel decision. In the cold night, with no trial or reason, they executed all 10. There were no names shared, no message sent. The lab was destroyed, the evidence erased. The Zorix thought it was done. They thought no one would know, but they were wrong. A small robot hidden under the ice had recorded everything. The Zorix didn't see it. That machine, simple and loyal, sent one last message to Earth before it was crushed. The message was short, broken, and full of static, but it was enough. Earth received the signal 3 days later. At first, people didn't understand. But when the names were confirmed and the truth became clear, the silence broke. Those 10 humans had families. They had friends. They were not just workers on a distant moon. They were loved. One was a daughter, one was a husband. One had a baby waiting at home. Across Earth and the colonies, people paused. Then the grief turned to anger. Then the anger turned into something colder: focus. The Zorix had done something cruel. They believed no one would care. They believed Earth would stay quiet. But they didn't realize what they had awakened. Something old, something patient, something human. The galaxy had changed, and Earth was now listening. The 10 humans who were killed by the Zorix were not just names on a report. Each of them had a life, a home, a family, and a story. They were people who had chosen to travel far from Earth, not to fight, but to learn. They were not soldiers. They were scientists, engineers, thinkers, and explorers. They worked on the cold moon to study signals from deep space. But now they were gone, and the world was only just beginning to understand who had been lost. On Earth, news stations began to share their pictures. Their faces appeared on every screen. One by one, their names were read aloud. Every picture showed a different person, each with a smile, each with hope in their eyes. They were young and old, men and women from different countries, backgrounds, and dreams. But all of them believed in the same idea, that the stars should be explored with peace, not fear. The first was Dr. Lena Muraj. She was only 35 years old. Born in India, she had always loved looking at the stars. As a child, she would lie on the roof of her house with her father and point out constellations. She became a top student in physics and space science. She studied hard, helped her classmates, and dreamed of working on the moon. Her younger brother, Arev, was the only family she had left. When he saw her face on the news, he broke down in tears. She had promised to come home for his birthday. Now she never would. The second was Thomas Reeves, a father of 2 from Canada. He was a quiet man who loved machines more than words. He worked on the communication systems at the moon base. His wife, Maria, was a teacher. Their children, Emily and Josh, were 9 and 6. Thomas had recorded bedtime stories for them before he left, so they could hear his voice even when he was far away. After the news broke, Maria played those recordings every night so the kids could still hear their father say, "I love you, little stars." Then there was Mila Chen, a software expert from the moon colony of Armstrong City. She was born on the moon itself, one of the first children raised off Earth. She had a deep love for both technology and nature. People used to laugh when she said she loved flowers, even though none grew where she lived. She kept pictures of Earth's forests on her wall and said one day she would visit and touch a real tree. Her partner, Jin, still lived in Armstrong. He lit a candle in her memory and placed it next to her favorite picture, a green forest she never got to see. Kofi Adu was the fourth. He came from Ghana, a proud son of a farming family. He had grown up helping his parents tend to the land, even when he was a top student in school. He always believed that space exploration should help regular people, not just governments. He studied how to use alien signals to improve food and water systems. His dream was to build better technology for farming back on Earth. His mother still kept his first science notebook. When she heard what happened, she sat on the porch and held the notebook close, crying quietly into the sunset. Number 5 was Captain Elaine Torres. She wasn't a military captain but a transport pilot. She flew supplies to research sites across space. She had a calm voice, clear hands, and sharp eyes. Everyone said she made them feel safe. She wasn't just there to fly, she helped run safety checks and rescue drills. On her last trip, she had flown a medical shipment for another research station before landing on the cold moon. Her cousin, Mateo, was in the Air Defense Corps. When he heard she had been killed without warning or trial, he wrote, "You took the kindest of us. You lit a fire you don't understand." The sixth was Naomi Feldman, a historian from New Israel. She wasn't there for science, but to study ancient languages and symbols found in alien signals. She believed stories were more powerful than weapons. Naomi had a soft smile and spoke in gentle tones. She always carried a small, old book, a gift from her grandmother, filled with quotes about hope. She had said once, "If we understand the past, we won't make the same mistakes in the future." When she died, her book was found open on her desk, next to her translation notes. Her family placed that book in a museum with her name on the cover. Seventh was Ivan Dobrovsky, an engineer from Ukraine. He was quiet, strong, and known for fixing anything. Even if a machine was years out of date, Ivan could bring it back to life. Other scientists joked that he could talk to broken things. He had built many of the systems used to keep the base warm and running. On his birthday, he had fixed the base's air filter system using spare parts and a spoon. He had a sister named Zoya, a dancer back on Earth. She said he was the one who gave us air, and now they've taken his. Eighth was Juniper Hale, a young woman from Australia. She was the youngest on the team, only 24, but already a rising star in radio signal studies. She had freckles, a loud laugh, and a love for puzzle games. She believed every strange noise from space was a mystery waiting to be solved. Her father, a retired miner, had told her stories of space workers when she was little. She said, "I want to go where the light hasn't reached yet." She had only been at the base for 3 weeks when the Zorks came. Her mother held her childhood telescope and wept as the world said her name. The ninth was Dr. Felix Mbe, a language AI expert from Senegal. He had built systems that could read and understand alien languages. He often told jokes and loved music. On his free time, he played guitar and wrote songs about stars. His favorite saying was, "Words are the strongest force in the universe." His husband, Levi, was a poet. After hearing the news, Levi released a poem that ended with the line, "You taught machines to speak, but silence took you away." Last was Maya Santos, a medical officer from Brazil. She had taken an oath to heal, not harm. She ran daily checkups and cared for everyone's health at the station. Even when tired, she smiled and brought warm tea to people working late. She kept a photo of her parents next to her sleeping pod. Her brother Raphael said, "She didn't believe in war. She believed in life." And they ended hers without a reason. These were the 10. They came from different parts of Earth and beyond. They spoke many languages, they held many beliefs, but they shared one purpose: to learn, to discover, and to bring that knowledge home. None of them expected danger. None of them wore armor. Their weapons were books, tools, and kindness. The Zorix had called them enemies, but they were builders. They were thinkers. They were the best of what Earth had to offer. And now they were gone. The pain reached far and deep. In schools, teachers showed students who the 10 were. They were real people, not just photos. Children drew their faces in notebooks. In cities, people lit candles and held hands. Across space colonies, flags were lowered and observatories stood still for a minute of silence. Scientists named stars after them. Pilots painted their names on ships. Coders turned their data into living records. Everywhere, their memory became a symbol. The Zorix had made a mistake. They believed they had destroyed 10 humans, but they had awakened 10 billion hearts. Each person the Zorix tried to erase now had a legacy growing larger each day. And each person they hurt had someone, many someones, who would never forget. Some of those someones were not just sad, they were powerful. One of the 10 was the child of a general. Another was the partner of a famous AI creator. 2 had worked with people in Earth Security Council. Many had taught students who were now in government, engineering, or defense. The Zorix had not just hurt strangers. They had hurt the ones connected to Earth's strongest minds, fiercest protectors, and most determined builders. Even the smallest action has waves. The Zorix had thrown a stone into a still lake. Now the water was moving, and Earth was rising. After the world learned about the 10 humans who were killed, something changed. At first, it was quiet. There were no shouts, no threats, no fire. But deep inside, Earth began to turn. People were sad, but they were also focused. A storm had started, not with weapons or battles, but with thoughts, plans, and purpose. The leaders of Earth did not speak loudly. They did not send angry messages. Instead, they gathered in small rooms and dark offices. They listened to stories from the families. They looked at the proof. They studied every detail of what had happened on that frozen moon. They remembered each face, each name, and each life that had been lost. They did not want revenge with fire. They wanted justice with care. Some of the people who loved the 10 were scientists. Some were soldiers. Others were pilots, engineers, and even artists. They did not all wear uniforms, but they had something in common. They had been hurt. They had been quiet too long. Now they were ready. The first sign of action was so small that the Zorix didn't even notice. A cargo ship went missing on its way to a supply station. It was not a warship. It just carried food and medical boxes, but it vanished. No signal, no light, no warning. The Zorix blamed a space storm. They thought it was just bad luck, but they were wrong. Then a listening post in Sector 7 went silent. It was a tall tower on a lonely rock meant to watch over passing ships. It had 5 guards and a strong signal booster. But one day it stopped answering. The tower still stood, but nothing inside worked. The Zorix sent a repair team. They found all systems offline. The guards were still alive, but no one knew how or why the tower had gone dark. Next came a spaceport. It was busy with traders, workers, and ships going in and out all day. One morning the lights didn't turn on. The doors didn't open, computers stopped. Fuel lines froze, nothing worked. The ships were stuck, traders yelled, workers panicked. But there were no signs of an attack, just silence. Each event looked small. One lost ship, one broken tower, one silent port. The Zorix didn't panic. They laughed. They thought it was just bad luck or lazy workers. They told their people not to worry. They told their commanders to fix the problems. But every time they tried, something else went wrong. The people behind these actions were careful. They didn't use big guns or loud machines. They used knowledge. They used code. They used skill. They knew where the Zorix stored their information. They knew which wires carried power. They knew which systems needed just one small touch to stop working. These humans were not trying to destroy everything. They were picking targets. They were sending a message. Every time the Zorix fixed one thing, another broke. It was like chasing shadows. The lights would turn on for a moment, then blink out. A door would open, then slam shut. A signal would beep, then go quiet again. The Zorix engineers were confused. They ran test after test. They replaced wires, batteries, and machines, but nothing helped. On Earth, people didn't cheer. They didn't clap. They just kept working. Each action was quiet. Each step was planned. They were not looking for attention. They were looking for balance. The 10 who were lost had given everything. Now it was time to show that Earth had not forgotten. In space, human ships moved carefully. They didn't fly close to Zorix patrols. They didn't shine lights, they just watched. Sometimes they sent small drones to float near stations. The drones didn't attack. They just recorded, listened, and learned. They gathered data. They waited. Earth was not in a rush. Time was on their side. Then something new happened. A science station on the edge of the Zorix system found its fuel missing. One day it had full tanks. The next day they were empty. No alarms went off. No ships were seen. But the fuel was gone. Without power, the station had to close. Its work stopped. The Zorix had no idea where the fuel went or how. After that, more changes came. Trade ships stopped arriving on time. Markets began to slow. Shipyards reported missing parts. Power grids flickered. Communication towers broke for hours at a time. Still, there were no explosions. No one got hurt. But the Zorix began to worry. They checked their maps. They called in their fleets. They looked for signs of a big war, but they found nothing. No armies, no big movements, just small problems one after another in different places. Still, the feeling grew. Something was happening, something quiet, something human. Earth kept saying nothing, but the silence was its own answer. Some of the Zorix leaders thought the humans would attack soon. They waited for warships. They waited for noise, but that never came. Instead, more systems failed. More plans broke. More silence spread. Zorix scientists tried to block Earth signals. They set up walls of code and space blocks, but the humans had already found ways around them. They sent messages in pieces, hidden inside songs and light waves. They used new codes that changed every second. No one on the Zorix side could stop them. Even inside the Zorix empire, people began to notice. Workers talked in hushed voices. Traders whispered in the markets. Pilots refused to fly through certain zones. Some people said the stars themselves were angry. Others said the dead humans had become ghosts, haunting the machines. No one had proof, but everyone felt it. Something was watching. A deep fear began to grow. But Earth did not shout. Earth watched. The people who lost family did not scream. They planned. The children who saw their parents cry did not forget. They studied. The builders, the thinkers, the pilots, and the planners all knew justice would not come in one big wave. It would come in small drops like rain, soft, steady, and strong. On the edge of space, near a quiet moon, a ship appeared. It did not send a signal. It had no name on the side. It simply floated. When a Zorix patrol ship went to check, it vanished. Not in a fireball, not in an explosion. It just slipped into the dark, too fast to follow. The patrol ship turned around. Its crew spoke of blinking lights, strange sounds, and a feeling of being watched. Nothing was broken, but nothing felt safe. In another part of the galaxy, a mining system went down. The machines froze, the workers left. The Zorix tried to restart it, but the code had changed. No one knew how. Files were gone. Names were replaced with symbols no one understood. They tried to rebuild the system from the start. It crashed again. One by one, the little pieces of the empire began to slip. Nothing was lost forever. Nothing was burned, but everything was touched. And still, Earth said nothing. Some Zorix leaders asked for answers. They blamed each other. They held long meetings. They tried new rules, but nothing worked. The truth was growing. This was not random. This was not bad luck. This was something else. This was Earth's first step. Not in fire, not in war, but in silence. They were not showing power through battles. They were showing control through calm. They were not rushing. They were teaching. They were saying in their own way, "You took something from us, and now we will take something from you." But they didn't take lives. They took time. They took control. They took balance. And with every step, they sent a message to the stars. You cannot harm Earth without feeling its weight. Even the smallest part of Earth, even a quiet person on a far moon, is not forgotten. The galaxy began to feel this truth. The storm had not started with thunder. It had started with a whisper. But even a whisper, if strong enough, can shake the sky. The Zorix Empire had ruled many star systems for a long time. They believed they were too powerful to be touched. Their fleets were large. Their soldiers were many. Their leaders were feared. They thought they could do anything and no one would stop them. They had silenced other species before. They had crushed small rebellions in the past. When the humans started doing strange things, the Zorix thought it would be the same again. But it was. At first the problem seemed small. One ship did arrive. One station went quiet. One market lost power. Each issue felt like a simple mistake. Zorix officers blamed storms, old wires, or lazy workers. They told their teams to fix things and move on. No one thought the humans could cause this. Humans were soft, they said. They cared too much. They asked too many questions. They were not warriors. They were not dangerous. But the problems didn't stop. They grew. Each week something else broke. A radar tower failed. A storage room caught fire. A trade computer showed the wrong prices. The Zorix tried to fix these things. They sent repair teams. They ran updates. They replaced machines. Still, the problems kept coming. In the middle of all this, a Zorix commander named Vel Terran noticed something strange. She sat at her desk on a high orbital station and read a list of recent events. Ships were delayed. Drones had vanished. Data had been lost. At first, it looked random, but as she looked longer, she saw a pattern. The stations that failed were near trade routes. The drones that disappeared had been guarding old mining zones. The markets that crashed were linked to human shipping lanes. It was not chance. It was a plan. She called her team into a meeting. She showed them the list. They studied the map and saw the pattern too. One technician said, "It looks like someone is closing off our paths one by one." Vel Terran nodded. She had a deep frown on her face. She knew this kind of work. It was slow, careful, and smart. Someone was thinking many steps ahead. Someone was watching closely, and that someone was not Zorix. Word spread quickly inside the military. More commanders began checking their systems. More officers noticed the strange changes. The usual answers, storms, errors, accidents, no longer made sense. There were too many problems and they all pointed in one direction. Earth. The humans were doing something, but no one knew exactly what. There were no big ships flying in, no armies marching, no loud messages. It was quiet, too quiet. And that silence made the Zorix nervous. Back on Zor Prime, the capital planet, the High Council of Defense held a secret meeting. The chamber was dark and full of worry. Leaders from across the Empire gathered. They wore long robes and carried data tablets full of bad news. They whispered to each other in low voices. Some looked angry. Others looked scared. One of them stood up. His name was Lor Fex, a tall, older leader who had ruled for over 40 years. He looked around the room and said, "We are being watched. Our systems are failing, and the only ones not speaking are the humans." Everyone went quiet. Another leader said, "But they have not sent any ships. There is no war." Lor Fex replied, "Not all war needs ships." That sentence hit the room like a thunderclap. Everyone understood. The humans were not using fire or force. They were using time, knowledge, and fear. They were breaking the empire from the inside. One by one, council members stood and shared what they had seen. A farm moon stopped receiving water. A fuel base lost control of its pumps. A robot factory sent out tools that didn't work. Everything that made the Zorix strong was slowly becoming weak. Still, the Empire tried to stay calm. They told the people that everything was fine. They said the delays were normal. They said the repairs were being handled, but the people did not believe them. Markets were crashing. Food was going bad. Jobs were disappearing. Families were angry. Soldiers were asking questions. Vel Terran was sent to investigate more deeply. She flew to different stations and spoke with workers. She looked at logs, maps, and broken wires. What she found was shocking. Many systems had been changed from the inside. Codes had been rewritten. Tools had been moved. Even simple things like door locks and light timers had been reset. This was not damage. This was control. The humans had been inside their systems for weeks, maybe months. They had studied everything. They had learned where the power flowed. They had tested small tricks, then bigger ones. And now the Zorks were sitting on a machine they no longer fully understood. Veltaren returned to the council and told them the truth. "The humans have prepared something," she said, "and we have been too proud to see it." Some of the leaders refused to believe her. They shouted, they argued. "We are stronger," one yelled. "We have fleets, we have guns." Veltaren shook her head. "But our guns don't matter if they won't fire, and our ships don't matter if they can't fly." The truth was heavy. It settled on the room like a dark cloud. The Zorks had ignored the humans for too long. They had thought Earth would cry, beg, and forget. But Earth had done none of those things. Earth had planned. Across the Empire, signs of fear began to grow. Zorik's merchants stopped flying into certain areas. Station leaders requested extra guards. Soldiers started carrying tools instead of weapons because more things were breaking than fighting. People whispered that Earth had become something new, something to be afraid of. And still, Earth said nothing. That silence was louder than any threat. The Zorks tried to send spies to Earth. None came back. They tried to hack into Earth systems. Their signals bounced back, changed, or vanished. They tried to stop Earth's traders, but for every ship they stopped, two more slipped through, quiet, unnoticed, free. One night, a giant map appeared in the sky above the Zorik's capital. No one knew where it came from. It showed 10 stars linked by light. Underneath were the names of the 10 humans who had died. The stars blinked slowly, one by one. Then the whole map vanished. It left no trace. The people saw it. They stood in silence. Some bowed their heads, others trembled. The Zorik's leaders tried to remove all records of the map, but it was too late. The image had been seen, and it had said one thing very clearly: "We remember." After that, even the bravest Zorik's commanders began to worry. Ships began to report strange malfunctions. Messages were delayed or twisted. Patrols were getting lost. Even the weather control systems on home planets began to fail. It rained when it wasn't supposed to. It snowed in dry zones. Crops grew wrong. Everything felt off. The Zorks were losing control, not in one big moment, but in 100 small ones. The humans were not shouting, they were not rushing, but they were moving. And every step made the Zorks weaker. Even the youngest Zorks children began to ask their parents, "Will the humans come here?" The parents didn't know what to say. Veltaren stood again in the council. This time no one shouted, no one argued. She looked at the leaders and said, "This is what fear feels like." They listened, because they had no choice. The Empire had once laughed at Earth. Now it trembled at a whisper. While the Zorik's empire argued in their high halls and struggled to keep control of their broken systems, Earth was doing something very different. Earth was not falling apart. Earth was becoming stronger, but it wasn't happening in the open. There were no news reports, No loud speeches, no shows of power. The real work was hidden. Across the planet, people were meeting in silence, in quiet buildings, inside bunkers, under oceans, and high in the mountains. Special teams gathered. They came from different nations, groups, and stations. Some wore military uniforms. Some wore lab coats. Some came in plain clothes. But all of them shared one thing. Someone they loved had been lost when the Zorks killed the 10 humans. They did not meet to grieve. That had already been done. They came now for something more serious. They came to plan. They knew that the Zorks still thought they were safe. They knew the enemy still believed Earth was weak. So Earth would stay quiet. Earth would stay in the shadows. And that silence would become its strength. In one underground room beneath the surface of the moon, 10 chairs sat around a long table. Each chair held someone important, a general, a code expert, a ship pilot, a scientist, a space miner, a tech leader, a diplomat, a builder, a spy, a mother. They had no name for their group. They didn't need one. They knew why they were there. At the center of the table was a screen. On that screen were pictures of the 10 who had died. Their faces were clear. Their eyes were bright. No one said their names out loud, but everyone remembered them. It was those faces that kept the room focused. The general stood and spoke first. "We will not fight this battle with fire. We will fight it with knowledge." Then the tech leader added, "We will not storm their walls. We will turn their lights off." The mother nodded. "We will not shout. We will speak through action." So the planning began. First, Earth mapped every known Zorik system, every planet, base, shipyard, fuel center, and market. Using secret scans, old trade logs, and even spy drones hidden inside delivery crates, Earth built a full picture of how the Zorik's empire worked. Every cable, every code, every route was marked. Earth knew more than the Zorik's imagined. Then came the deep code teams. These were the quietest warriors Earth had. They didn't carry weapons. They carried tools that worked through satellites and signals. They didn't need to touch a door to open it. They didn't need to be in the same room to stop a system. They created keys that opened locks no one knew were locked. These coders worked in silence. Some were in cold labs under Antarctica. Others were inside floating data ships that never stopped moving. One team even lived inside a hollowed-out asteroid. They didn't care about sleep. They cared about safety. They wrote lines of invisible language that could hide inside the Zorik systems, waiting, not to destroy, but to control. While the coders worked on systems, other teams worked on movement. These were pilots, trackers, and supply experts. They knew which ships to watch. They knew how to move without being seen. They sent decoy ships to distract the Zoriks while real ships slipped through dark zones. They left false trails and quiet signals. They built a net that slowly closed around the Zoriks without a single sound. On Earth itself, special factories changed their work. Some stopped making normal parts. Instead, they made strange devices, small black boxes that could send silent waves, chips that could confuse sensors, and tools that made machines act like they were broken. These tools were sent far away. Some were hidden inside gifts. Others were placed inside repair boxes sent as help to Zorik's allies. But they were not gifts. They were seeds. Seeds that would grow into something much bigger. The scientists played their role too. They didn't study stars anymore. They studied how to make energy appear and vanish without trace. They looked at how signals could be bent or erased. They tested how to break communication without cutting wires. One group even learned how to change time slightly inside Zoric's clocks, so their systems were always just a little too early or a little too late. While all this happened, Earth's leaders stayed silent. They said nothing to the media. They gave no signs to the Zorcs. On the outside, Earth looked peaceful, but below the surface, the work grew stronger every day. One very important room sat below a quiet mountain in Asia. Inside, the top space mines met with Earth's secret defense teams. They had one goal: to make the Zorcs think Earth was doing nothing. So they sent peaceful messages to the galaxy. They opened schools, launched music into space, and talked about art. The Zorcs saw this and laughed. Earth is weak, they said. They play with sounds while we rule with power. But the Zorcs did not know the truth. Even the music sent into space carried secret code. One team, called the Listeners, had the hardest job. They didn't plan, they didn't build, they waited. They listened for every signal the Zorcs sent. They watched every ship. They tracked every trade. They collected every word. And when something small changed, they reported it to the quiet table of 10. This is how Earth's secret plan was built. Not in fire, not in one day, but piece by piece. Patiently, quietly, clearly. The people working on this plan didn't want war, they wanted safety. They wanted peace, but they also wanted justice. Earth had been kind to the galaxy. Earth had been hopeful. Earth had sent scientists, not soldiers. And the Zorcs had answered with death. Now Earth would answer back. But Earth would not become like the Zorcs. Earth would not kill. Earth would not take. Earth would remind the galaxy who they really were. They would show that peace is not weakness. That silence is not fear. That memory is not just sorrow. It is also power. In the cities of Earth, people continued with daily life. They went to school, to work, to shops, but deep in their hearts they knew something big was happening. Everyone felt it, like the quiet moment before a storm, like the soft tension before thunder rolls. In the sky, human ships moved like shadows. In the code, human signals crawled like vines. On the stars, human watchers took notes. All the while, the 10 at the table never rested. They reviewed every plan. They checked every system. They measured risk. They watched each move the Zorcs made. And when the time was right, they gave the order. Not an order to strike, but an order to turn the key. All at once, across the galaxy, the hidden codes began to move. One small light blinked on a power panel in a Zorc station. Then another. A screen in a ship control room showed a blinking dot that no one understood. Doors started opening without touch. Lights flickered without reason. Sounds came through speakers that were off. The Zorcs called it a system bug. But it was not a bug. It was a message. The Zorcs had not heard from Earth. But now Earth was speaking. In the only language the Zorcs understood. Control. Not with loud words, but with quiet strength. And the Zorcs, who had once believed humans were soft, finally began to realize. Earth had not been sleeping. Earth had been planning. The Zorix Empire had never faced anything like this before. They were used to loud battles, fast ships, and flashing weapons. They had trained their soldiers for war with noise and fire. But this time, war did not come with fire. It came in silence. It came like a shadow. The attacks were strong but quiet. They were not meant to destroy buildings. They were meant to destroy control. One by one, outposts began to fail. These were not large bases. They were small stations far from the center of the empire, places where guards were few and workers were tired. Earth chose these places on purpose, not to hurt the weak but to show the strong that their reach had limits. These stations didn't fall from bombs. They simply stopped working. The first station lost its power early in the morning. The sun had just risen over the frozen moon it circled. Workers were getting ready for the day. Then the lights turned off. The heat stopped. The doors would not open. No alarms rang. The backup system failed. Everything was still. The people inside the station waited, but nothing happened. No attackers came. No ships landed. Only silence filled the halls. Then the screens turned on by themselves. A short message appeared. It had no name. It gave no warning. It said only this: "Stop now or lose more." The message disappeared. The power came back. The system started again like nothing had happened. But the people were not the same. They were afraid, not of being hurt, but of being powerless. They had never felt that before. More stations went dark in the following days. A fuel depot in a busy trade zone stopped pumping gas. A shipyard near a star lost its tools. A data tower lost all its files. Nothing exploded. No one was hurt. But each place was touched in a way that could not be ignored. Each time the message was the same: short, clear, final. At first, the Zorix leaders called it a trick. They blamed their own workers. They said the systems were old. They said the problems were small, but deep down they were afraid. They could feel something was moving behind the dark, something careful, something human. Earth had not sent an army. They had sent a plan. It was not made of ships or guns. It was made of signals, maps, and memory. This was a different kind of war, a war of quiet control, a war of deep knowledge, a war where the enemy did not know where or when they had lost, only that they had. As the days passed, more and more outposts gave up without a fight. They did not want to risk being left in the cold. They did not want to face the silence. Many began turning off their own systems before the humans could. They sent messages to Earth saying they would not help the Empire anymore. Earth responded by doing nothing, and that was enough. The fear spread faster than fire. Even stations that had not been touched began to panic. Workers left early. Pilots refused to land. Some guards ran away. Even the high officers of the Zorix Empire began to question if they were safe. They checked their own doors. They locked their own files. They whispered in their own halls. The Empire had not fallen, but it was cracking. Earth's attacks did not kill. They did not burn. But they reached into the heart of the Empire. They took control without taking life. They stopped movement without stopping breath. This made them stronger than any weapon. One large spaceport full of traders and travelers was shut down in the middle of the day. It had hundreds of people inside. Ships were landing and leaving every hour. Then all at once the lights turned red. Doors closed, screens went black. No one could get in or out. It lasted only 2 hours. When the lights returned, everything was fine again. Nothing was missing. No one was harmed. But on the wall, a new message had appeared. It was painted in soft light. You are not alone, but you are not in charge. The message faded a few minutes later, but the meaning remained. The Empire was no longer in control. Earth was not asking for power. They were showing they already had it. Many Zoric stations began to surrender without being attacked. They called it joining the silence. They turned off their weapons. They erased their orders. They stopped sending help to the Empire. Instead of fighting Earth, they began to follow it. This was Earth's goal. Not war, not fear, just the end of harm. The end of silence about the 10 who had died. The end of pretending nothing had happened. Earth wanted justice. And justice for them did not look like fire. It looked like choice. Earth's plan worked because it was patient. They did not take everything at once. They let fear and memory do most of the work. The people inside the Empire began to feel something they had never felt before: doubt. They no longer believed their leaders could protect them. They no longer believed their empire could stand forever. Even the soldiers began to see things differently. They had trained for war, but there was no enemy to fight. Their guns were useless. Their ships were slow. Their orders felt empty. Some of them left their posts. Others asked to speak with humans. They wanted to understand. Earth sent no leaders to speak. Instead, they sent a message to all. The ones who harmed the 10 must answer. The rest must choose. It was not a demand. It was a door. The Empire was used to control. They told people what to do. Earth did not. Earth gave the galaxy a chance to change. And many did. Earth's attacks were not always big. Sometimes they were small. A food system would lose its settings. A weather machine would stop. A message would vanish before it reached the right person. These little things added up. They made life inside the Empire harder and harder. Not impossible, but uncertain. Uncertainty is powerful. People can handle pain, but they cannot live without trust. The Zorics had lost the trust of their people, and Earth had earned it. Even the outer planets began to ask for help. These were places the Empire had ignored for years. Now they saw Earth as a light. They asked to trade. They asked to talk. Some even asked to join. Earth did not rush. They helped only where it was needed. They said no to power. They said yes to peace. All over the galaxy, the message was clear. Earth was not a conqueror. Earth was a teacher. Their attacks had no sound, but they made the whole empire listen. In the end, Earth had done something no one expected. They had won without war. They had broken an empire without breaking a single stone. And they had done it not by being stronger, but by being smarter. They gave the Zorics a choice: stop now or lose more. And the empire, piece by piece, began to stop. The Zorics empire had been losing ground for weeks. Their stations were shutting down. Their systems were breaking apart. Their soldiers were confused. But still, they believed they could win if they forced Earth into a trap. The Zorics had always relied on strength and fear. They didn't understand Earth's quiet power. So they decided to set a final trap, one they believed would catch the humans off guard and end the silent attacks once and for all. They chose a faraway supply station called Vorta Prime. It looked like an easy target. The Zorix sent out a fake distress call, claiming the station was damaged and needed urgent help. Around the station, they placed dozens of their strongest warships. These ships hid behind the planet's moons and asteroids. They were filled with weapons and ready to surround any ship that came near. The Zorix were sure the humans would answer the distress signal. They hoped to trap a small fleet, take prisoners, and send a loud message back to Earth. But Earth did not come. Days passed and the Zorix waited. Their warships floated silently in space, ready to strike. Still, no human ships appeared. Some of the Zorix commanders laughed and said the humans were cowards. Others grew angry, thinking the humans had outsmarted them again. What they didn't know was that Earth had already found the trap and had decided to walk into it in their own way. One by one, the Zorix warships started to glitch. Their lights flickered, their engines slowed, their control panels froze, then their long-range communication systems failed completely. The fleet could no longer speak to each other. Panic spread through the command rooms. They tried to restart the systems, but it was too late. Earth had already taken over their code. The Zorix ships were not just surrounded, they were locked in place. Back on the station of Vorta Prime, strange things began to happen too. The doors opened and closed without commands. Machines stopped responding. The lights blinked slowly as if someone else was in control. The security cameras turned toward the officers without being touched. Then, across every screen on the station, the same words appeared in simple white letters. The trap was not yours. The Zorix leaders watching from their capital realized they had made a terrible mistake. They had not trapped Earth. Earth had turned the trap around. Without sending a single ship, without firing a single shot, Earth had captured the entire ambush. Their code had already entered the Zorix systems before the warships ever launched. They had waited until the Zorix gathered their best ships in one place, then quietly shut them all down. The fleet could not move. The weapons would not work. The engines could not restart. Even the escape pods refused to open. The humans had done all of this without being seen, without being heard. It was not just smart, it was complete. The Zorix officers had no choice. They sat in silence watching screens they could no longer control, and far away on Earth no one cheered. The humans simply waited for the message to sink in. On the station, the workers began to whisper. They had seen the message. They had felt the change. For years, they had served the Empire out of fear, but now they saw something different. Earth had shown its strength not by destroying the station, but by taking control without harm. Some workers removed their Zorix symbols. Some walked out of their jobs. Some simply sat still, waiting to see what would happen next. Earth never came to land. They never took over the base. They didn't need to. The point had already been made. The people inside Vorta Prime now knew the truth. The Zorix Empire could be beaten. And Earth had done it with patience, silence, and precision. The trap had failed, but it had also revealed something much bigger. The Empire was not only weak, it was already crumbling. News of the failure at Vorta Prime spread quickly. The message, "The trap was not yours," was shared across thousands of screens. Even planets loyal to the Zorix started to question what was real. If the Empire's strongest ships could be frozen in place, then what hope did they have? Some governors stopped answering orders. Some small outposts turned off their Zorix flags. Fear no longer belonged to the humans. It now belonged to the Empire. The Zorix leaders held secret meetings. They argued and blamed each other. They had spent years building fleets and weapons, but Earth had defeated them with code and quiet steps. The trap had become a mirror, showing the Empire its own weakness, and the reflection was too clear to deny. Earth's response never changed. They did not threaten. They did not boast. They only sent the same quiet message to every Zorix channel: stop now, or lose more. There were no battles, no fire, no screams. But the silence left behind was louder than any war cry the Zorix had ever known.